All right, welcome back, listeners and viewers. Welcome back, Nabil. We made it to the second episode. Who thought we would be able to do that? But here we are. Now, are you aware of the topic that we're going to discuss today? Because I didn't brief you, right?
Not aware. We're gonna do it freestyle, and we will try to be as concise and professional as possible. Let's bring the topic in.
That is the spirit. Actually, the reason I didn't want to brief you this time was because this is a topic that deals with, let's just say, rationality, right? So I wanted to get insight that is like not filtered through the filter of literature already, right? I wanted to get a very raw insight on like everyday perspective. That's why I didn't include any sort of briefing for you this time. But I'm gonna hope this turns into something that let's just say coherent enough. The topic that's in my mind today is that we have a thing called philosophy of perception, right? So what basically happened was we discussed the meaning of life, and we tried to discuss the purpose of life. We started with the meaning of life, but what we could only talk about was the purpose of life. But we got a good gist of that topic, right? So the problem with what most of the literatures talk about, the meaning of life or the purpose of life, because the original idea was that we were going to talk about the different ways of lives that exist, right? So we were going to talk about stoicism, we were going to talk about theism and atheism and all sorts of ways of life, right? So what happened along the way was uh, we got crumbled, and that's the part where I read. What happened was that we got crumbled over something called the theory of knowledge or the theory of perception, which like the base idea is that whatever knowledge or whatever worldview that you create is a byproduct of, well, first things first, what is a byproduct of? And if it's just a byproduct of something that is, let's just say, artificial, then how much and how real is our perception? So for example, you see something, and the philosophy of perception says that the way you see it, like the premise is everyone does not see the same way, but the question is why. So the philosophy of perception says it's because your final product of perception, the way you see things, is a combination of your already existing knowledge, beliefs, and things like that. So essentially, you see the world the way you are. So from a completely non-philosophical way, is this like coherent to you? Does it make sense? Do you agree with that?
Yep, actually, I agree to you. So different people see the world differently, right? In fact, when I was in like uh, primary four, primary five, I I had this weird dream, right? I had this weird dream, and the weird dream is um it's actually it started from not a dream. It started from a TV show called Cow and Chicken. It's a TV show. It's a cartoon TV show. It's a weird TV show. If you're from my generation and you watch the same TV show, and in this episode, there's an episode where either cow or the chicken. I mean, they're the main characters, by the way. The main character is cow and chicken. Main character is cow. So I think they took in something. They took a pill or something, right? They drank something, right? And then from that drink, they noticed that the world is not as it is. Like all this time, they think that they're living in their house and they're living a normal life. They took this something, and apparently they have been in this cave filled with meat, sort of like an intestine. So basically,
Okay.
that was the episode, right? That was the episode.
Okay.
Maybe it's the wrong perception of the episode, but somehow the episode turned out like that. And I
Mhm.
was thinking, oh wow. So I thought about this episode when I'm in class, and I'm like, wait, what if right now me sitting here in this class with all the students over here? there's there's other students, there's the teacher, he's writing about, what if none of this is real, right? What
You
if
had an existential crisis right there.
yeah, yeah, right? What is I'm what if I'm in intestine of meat, right? And I have no idea. It's just I
Okay.
just don't take the right pill. And
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the only person who exists. What if I'm the only person that exists? All right. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure all
Okay.
philosophers ask this question,
Okay.
right? What if I'm the
True.
only person that exists and all these other beings are just part of this, like
Simulation.
Facebook meta, yeah, simulation, right? We're like, oh
Okay.
wow, what is it? Okay, so that's an extreme. The other side of extreme is okay, fine. Everyone is real. Everyone experiences what you're experiencing, and I think somewhere in between that, I mean, closer to reality is, everyone sees things a bit differently. One
Mm-hmm.
question that I think might relate to this is there's a scientific question that asks, does everybody see the same color?
Oh,
Right?
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If I see blue, like I'm looking at the Zoom logo right now, right? It's blue Zoom. I'm looking at it and it's my blue. It's what I've been seeing. What if my blue is your red? And we'll never know. We'll never know. Because
Mm-hmm.
all my life, my parents and everyone around the world has pointed to that color that I
Mm-hmm.
perceive as blue and said that it's blue. Well, for you, if I like transfer my consciousness, right? I go to
Yeah. Yeah.
someone's zodiac, I'm like, what the hell? His blue is actually red, and we'll never know. So that's very interesting, right? So if
I mean,
that's
there are a lot of things there to unpack. Like I like how you use the color, the analogy with color, because we know for sure, scientifically speaking, that there are people who are colorblind, semi-colorblind, monocolorblind. So we know that not everybody
exactly
sees the world the same way we do, right? So like that's there. So where do we
exactly
build from that? Like this reminds me, there's a scientific thing, there's a scientific experiment, not it's not a literal experiment, but like it's an analogy called, I think it's called Mary's room. So the idea is, the scientist says, the philosopher, sorry, says that if there is a woman called Mary and she lives in a room that is black and white, and like the everything in that room, including herself, is black and white, right? There is no color, and she has studied for years and years about color, and she knows everything about the wavelength, about the objects that it occurs in, about the depth perception, every scientific measurement possible about color. And if one day she, breaks that room open and she sees a world full of color, right? So they narrow it down to one, like the apple. So she knows that an apple is red, and she knows every single scientific property about the color red. So one day, if she sees an actual apple, will there be anything different from what she already knows? Will it add any information? Will it add any knowledge to her understanding about the color, about the experience? And if right off the bat, if you ask someone, like if I ask you, what do you think?
there's a few things. I like that. I like that analogy, right? Actually, they made a movie about it. Maybe it's based on that because in that
Okay.
movie, I saw the trailer. The trailer
Mm-hmm.
is it's one of these movies where it's like, oh, they're hiding some this big organization is hiding something from us,
Okay.
right? So that's the premise of the movie. And the movie starts off with everything black and white, and then one of the characters is like, take this pill, they're hiding something from us. He took the pill and he started to see, the apple's red. And like, oh, you've been lying to me. I'm gonna revolt against you. It's
It's like
th-
Matrix with colors.
yeah, yeah, rebellion teenage movie. Like
Okay.
with teenagers, like, oh yeah, rebellion, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's one. So one of them is okay, fine. She knows how it will feel. She studied all the literature, but knowing it is different than experiencing, right? Right? Like, of course,
Mhm.
even as ourselves, we there are some people who have, look at celebrities, people in Brunei, have watched celebrities and they know how the celebrities are like, blah blah blah. And the moment they see the actual celebrities in real life, it's a whole different sensation. Why? Because we ourselves are not our conscious minds.
Mm-hmm.
We are also our unconscious. The unconscious takes over. The unconscious, you don't tell your unconscious, okay, at this moment you be scared, you be amazed. It's unconscious, man. So the unconscious takes over. And I think part of human life is also experiencing that unconscious, more like facing our unconscious. It's part of us, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something that we're not fully aware because it's unconscious. So that's one part, right? Another part is we can actually, we don't have to think about it. You just go to YouTube and there's these videos of, they, I think they developed these new glasses that allows people who are colorblind to see,
Mm-hmm.
right? Actually, Jake Paul made a video about it, and it turns out he's actually not colorblind. It's it's fake video or whatever, right? But there's actual colorblind people who took these glasses, and they're actually tears, falling down there. Oh my god! It's not just that; it's also uh, videos of people who are deaf.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they put on these devices into their ears that allows them to hear, and they're crying like, oh wow, like, oh, it's overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also an extreme part of the story, where uh I'm not sure how real is this story, but there's a story where there's is this person who is colorblind, and one day he got an opportunity to get like eye surgery or something, something to fix this colorblindness, either eye surgery or anything, right? Eventually,
Mm-hmm.
the story goes that he committed suicide.
Okay.
Eventually, the story goes. I think it's not just colorblindness. I think it's he was blind. He was blind, and then suddenly he can see. Right. So all his life, he skated his sensitivity, focusing on his touch, his balance, and his ears. Right. Super sensitive. The things that you can't hear, he can hear because he relies
Mm-hmm.
on that. Suddenly, you add in two senses, overwhelmed, stimuli. Oh my god, this is too much for me. I don't know. I become dizzy. I like it's that moment when you get too much impulse. You're in a room where there's too many people talking to you. You get dizzy. You faint. Maybe it's the same thing, but every day for him is overwhelming.
I
Um,
think it's very
yeah.
important because of the premise that we tried to establish about Mary knowing everything about color. So I think the question, like as you said, evidently we know that when people experience something, it's very different from no matter how much you see it on television or you see it on YouTube or you read about it, right? So I think that later part of the equation is much more self-explanatory, but in this experiment, I think, Frank Jackson or something was the name of the guy who did it. So I think in this experiment, the focus is not towards the fact that will there be a difference in terms of experience. The way I see it is that at the same time, the question also tries to understand that when we say that Mary knows everything about color, that is humanly possible. So I think it also tests the limits of human knowledge. Like, is it possible to know everything? Because, like, when you were talking about blind people or people who are deaf, they don't know everything about, let's just say hearing or something. So, for example, a colorblind person, he does not know anything about color, right? And on the surface, one might say, oh, just because he learns the wavelengths or frequencies, it's not going to help him. But I think that's why it's very important that the premise also tests what is the limit of human knowledge. Like, theoretically speaking, is it possible to learn this much that there is no space left? Because essentially what is happening is that we as all, I think many living creatures share this experience that our senses are actually learning in experiences for us. So by seeing things, by touching things, by feeling things, we are learning about our environments, right? I think that's biologically correct, right? So when you see cats and cats are sniffing everything, they're actually feeling the world with their whiskers, right? So what they're doing is they are learning about the environment through their senses, right? So I think the question also tries to emphasize that are we okay, we know that we are dependent on our senses to learn, but is it possible to satirize that learning so much into one sense that the others, like one sense, for example, just by reading books, right? So is it possible that you learn to the extent that no other sense can top it? Like there's no point of any other sense uh, giving you any sort of further learning experience because you already have learned everything.
Mm. I have two ways to answer this. Number one
Mhm.
is realistically, and number two is in terms of non-fiction, right? The first one is I agree with you. When you mentioned that we're limited to our senses, the way we navigate into the world, how do things look like, how do things smell like, is
Mhm.
all dependent on our senses. Even if,
Yep.
for example, right? Even if, for example, we know how black holes look like. We've taken a photo of a black hole.
Mhm.
What sense is it using? Even when looking at the photo, right? We're looking at the a picture using the sense of our eyes. And then we know the calculations around the black hole. We know how light passes. We know all the equations, and we know
Mhm.
that using that using mathematical equation. We know that using physics. Well, we think about that. We think about the numbers. We calculate. We use the brain. Is that a sense? I don't know, but it is information processing. But I think there's a limit to it. Yes, I think to answer your question, I understand now how you related to this to Mary's room. I think I think knowing it and experiencing are two different things. Because uh, you can know everything about the color red, sure, but
Mhm.
if you but feeling that, having that, I think the sensors in the eyes is called rods and cones. That's a sensor, and it looks
Mhm.
at red, blue, and green or something like that. Uh, so if your cone for red is crushed and you can't pass through the red color, you can know a lot about red, but that stimuli, that when that stimuli, when red color puts in, hits the center and goes into your brain, that stimuli, as much as as much as information you process, you can never have that stimuli, right? So similar to there are animals that detect UV light. I think like chameleons or something, they can see UV light. We're limited to the visible spectrum, right? I think 1000, I think 800 to 1200 nanometer or something. That's the range. But there are animals who can see radio waves. There are animals who can see ultralight waves. Now you can argue, wait, Nabil, actually you can't see ultralight waves. If you go
Mhm.
to the shop and you see, the lights, yeah, fine. But that's the visible part of the ultraviolet. There's a lot of light emitting out. If you're a chameleon, you can see more stuff, right?
Mhm.
Also, you can argue that, hey, Nabil, what do you mean we can't see infrared light? If you take an iPhone right now, right? I don't think you can see it, right? You see there, right?
Yeah.
The front part of the iPod emits an infrared light. And Nabil, you can see that. You can see that. I'm looking at it now, right? I can't see. Nabil, you can argue that, oh, put it on the screen, you can see it. Fine. It's detected by the sensors. The sensors
Mhm.
convert that infrared into visible light for you. So it's translated. But seeing it directly is different from it being translated. So for me, I think, nah,
Okay,
Mary, come on.
here's how I think the bridge can be gapped, right? When we say now the idea is that our understandings about absorbing knowledge are limited. Here's what I mean. So maybe
Mhm.
this is like a long shot. This is a stretch, and I don't know if
Sure, sure.
philosophers in the past have uh, tried to mend it in this way or not. But here's what I think. what we experience from our surroundings, right, is a simulation, is a reaction of whatever the cause is. But the effect is everything that happens in our brain, right? So if something hot touches your skin, so whatever that cause is external. But whatever effect you take, whatever experience you experience is internal, right? So one could argue what is essentially happening is that your brain is sending signals to these, let's just say, skin cells. I don't know, medical is your field, so you
Yep.
tell me how the burning thing works. But essentially, the brain is sending signals to process these, right? And we know of instances. I was reading about itching. I know, weird, but I was reading about itching, and I realized that itching is actually, we don't know why we have itching, but one guess is that it's an evolutionary vestigial once again to
Making me
it's
itch now. Yeah.
that is not how it works.
No, no, no. Like you, I think about itching. I'm like, oh wow, suddenly my yeah. Sorry. I'm yeah.
But
Sorry,
yeah,
sorry.
no, it's okay. The idea is that why does our brain, and because you can argue that something, let's say something spiky or something agitative touches your skin, and hence there is itching, right? But there are times
Mm,
when nothing is touching your skin, but your
mm,
brain is illusionized, your brain is deceived that something is touching your skin, and hence you get the sensation, right?
mm.
There are
Yeah,
possible, there's actually, I don't know how much biology there is to back this, but there's talks about this in the philosophical world, that if you're 100% conceived, like you're convinced that this cup here is hot, right? And it's not. But if you touch it, there's a good chance that for a microsecond your brain will actually repeat the same patterns in your neural endings that it would if it actually touches something that is hot. Now once again, I don't know how much biological background there is, how much biological truth there is to this, but that's the thing that we discuss about in philosophy, known as the placebo effect, right? So if you are
mm,
100% convicted that yes, this is going to work, like this thing is hot, then your brain, even for a microsecond, will actually be convinced that, oh, this is hot, and it will process the same ideas, it will process the same uh, reaction as it would to how it would if it actually touches something hot. So back to the idea being that we react to external environments, but the reaction, ultimately the way we feel the reaction, is internal, right? So
of course.
that's what I meant by, is the knowledge that we already have, is it saturated, or is it merely books? Because one could say, oh, I have read everything about the color red, but when I look at the color red, it's very different than when I read about it. Well, maybe our barrier between reading and absorbing knowledge is limited. So back to the like burning example, if you could know exactly what temperature a certain thing is, and if you are well versed, now the thing is that this is what I mean by the gap between knowledge and actual perceived knowledge, right? That there is a gap. When I say 25 degrees Celsius, it's a number, but it will actually pass through a filter in your brain for you to process that, oh, 25 is relatively cold. When I say -1, you will actually process it to know that, oh, it's cold. But what if that gap can be reduced? What if our processings, the way we accept knowledge, is so much saturated that we can actually convince our brain to to just sample that experience of experiencing something in real world? What if we could actually tell our brain, convey to our brain that, oh, 18 degrees or -1 degree Celsius is so cold that you can actually feel it? So that's something that I try to wrap my head around, that is that humanly possible?
I mean, I'll just tell you one thing, right? And that is our brains are human beings are so bad at sensing. Let me tell you this. in science school, there's one of the first things that we learn is how
Mm-hmm.
the human being is a terrible sensor. Terrible
Mm-hmm.
sensor. We might think something is 25 degrees Celsius. No, it's like 20, 22. No, it's
Okay.
18. You know how sometimes you go into a room and you're like, oh, why is it so cold? Well, it's not cold, bro. It's 25 degrees Celsius, right?
Okay.
Oh, why does it feel cold to me? Right? So one of the things we did was in science school, where there's very simple experiment. In front of us are three bowls of water. I'm not sure if you have tried this experiment, but there's three bowls of water. The center
I didn't
bowl
go to medical
is
school, bro.
no, bro. This is science school. This is science. Science. In
Okay.
the center is normal tap water. Normal tap
Okay.
water. The right side is hot water, and on the left side is cold water. Right? Not hot, not really hot, like tolerable hot. Right? Uh, what we did was put our right hand on the right bowl, left hand on the left bowl, right? So it will be warm, left will be cold, right? Leave it there for 30 seconds to 1 minute, right? Let the body feel the temperature, right? Okay. So guys, students, what do you feel? Okay, right one feels hot, ma'am. Oh, left, what do you feel? Ah, cold. Okay, fine. Now lift the hand up and put both hands in the bowl. Now,
In the center
if
one.
we if we are put it on the center ball. Put it on the center ball. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if human beings are really good at sensing temperature, we'll say, hey, it's normal tap water, right? But when the teacher asked, we did not feel that it's normal water. The right hand that touched the warm water felt cold. It felt like it's in ice water.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the hand that has been in the cold water felt like it's warm.
Okay. Okay.
So
That's interesting.
we are horribly bad. So that's one of the first few lessons in science school. The lesson here is you think that your sensors are good. No, it's bad. In fact, it's terribly bad, right? We need calibrators. In physics, we need, precise measurements. We need all these things. Do not rely on your sensor. In fact, one of the things that, in science you learn is eyewitness is sometimes really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because people get intoxicated. You might think you see something, but what is measurable? What is measurable by the senses? What is consistent? So all these different things make up in science. So if you ask me about human experiences, how much we can sense in things,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things we can sense. But does it mean it's real? Does it mean it's accurate? Maybe not. Maybe not.
Here's just
So
how I'm trying like this is the reason I think that such a theory is possible, like about human beings knowing to the extent that we can feel it, because I'm just trying to reverse the process of sensor, right? So what happens is you touch something hot, and hot, your brain is your nerves feel it, and they send message back to the brain, to the neural system, that, oh, it's hot, right? I'm just thinking if it is humanly possible to reverse that process, because ultimately, what convinces you that this thing is hot is your brain itself. It's not the hot element
yes.
itself. For example, people who have burnt receptors. So there is a gap, like they're touching something hot, but there are not receptors in their skin cells. So no message is conveyed back to the brain. So the brain does not know it's hot.
Okay. I'll answer your question really quickly. And before that, okay, I'll answer your question first, and then I'll tell you a very interesting experiment. Okay.
Okay.
So a cool theoretical answer is that yes, all these experiences are from the brain. The brain is telling you this is hot. The brain is our way of translating our experiences into our consciousness, right? So it's about having all these senses, put it all in one processor, and implement it into our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a device that can directly connect to our neurons, our central nervous system, and can produce the same impulses. So instead of my hand actually touching the hot part,
Mm-hmm.
that part of the nerve is connected to this computer. which generates me the thought of me, so my eyes, so okay, simple experiment. Me touching a hot pot, what sensors are in play? Sense of touch, I'm touching it. Sense of temperature, I'm touching it. Sense of position, which means that I know where my hand is going, that's a sense as well. Sense of sight, I can see where my hand, where the cup is relative to my hand, and where my hand is relative to the cup. If I take all these senses that is responsible for me touching the cup, take all the senses, take all the neurons, put it into computer that says, hey, imagine you're touching a cup, and then the brain produces that response. Theoretically, I think that's actually possible. And to put it further, I think this is something that has been done in the Matrix, basically. So in the Matrix, right, you see them pulling the cord plug, right? That's directly connected to the central nervous system. So I think in the future,
here's where I think it happens. Like this, the same thing. I think this is where it happens. Now, I don't know. I need your biological expertise.
Sure.
I am as disappointed as my father is that I didn't go to medical school. So I need your help here, right?
Sure.
When you see a nightmare, your body literally, it has the same reflex that it would if it actually sees something that is, scary. So when you see it in a dream, there is nothing scary, but your brain is processing it. And at times, you wake up and you're sweating, and you're the entire sensory system that is, active in the real experience of that thing is active. And there were actually experiments. Once again, I think Resource did it, Michael Stevens did it, where he observed the brain activity of the people who are sleeping, and they say that it's actually very, very close, but it's more heightened. It's more heightened than how they would experience that same thing in real life. These were accurate to the extent that scientists can predict by the brain activity if the person had a pleasant dream or a bad dream or a sad dream, because the same brain parts are active. So essentially, like, there's a good possibility that you see something scary in real life, and your brain conveys all the required sensors, right? All the required things go back to the brain, but your brain imagines it, makes it up in dream, or even better, in hallucinations, right? So the thing is not there, but you are 100% convinced it's there. So the reaction is same. So do you think that's like exactly what you're talking about? That it does happen, no?
Yeah, it definitely does happen, right? Especially if there are moments where, you fall asleep, and, you have a bad dream, and you dream that there's someone chasing you, and you try to run away. You'd run away as fast as you can. As fast as you can. The faster you go, you look behind you, right? The ghost is chasing you the same speed. It's always behind you. It's always trying to chase you, right? and then, it's not real, but it's the same fight or flight response, right? We feel that way when you get scared of things. If we see a hunter trying to hunt us down, it's a fight or flight response, similar to a nightmare. In the topic of dreams, I think it's in the realm of neuropsychology, neuroscience, and psychology. I'm not very familiar with the literature, but I do. It's quite well known that people do experience these things. And let me tell you an experiment, right? So here's a weird thing. So we might think that how to say, you mentioned that we can perceive the sense without actually perceiving it. We can actually feel that the pot is hot by triggering our brains without actually physically touching the hot pot. Here's an experiment that might prove that. So this is an experiment that you can actually do at home. You can actually do it at home. So what happened is, you just sit down and put your hand on the table, right? Put your hand on the desk. Right? Simple, right? Now, as you're putting your hand on the desk, have a fake hand. Have a fake hand right next to your real hand. Have a fake hand next to your real hand, right?
Why do you think I have a fake hand lying around in my house?
No, 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 no. Like, okay, you
You
just
said I could do this at home.
uh, you can
Will
make
a
your
real hand do? Will another real hand do?
actually it does.
Okay,
It
okay.
does. It does. It does. Another real hand will actually work, right?
Mhm.
So your hand and a fake hand. Let's just imagine you
Okay.
have a fake hand, right? In between the real hand and the fake hand, you put there a piece of paper, something to block. So you only see one hand. So you
Yeah,
only
yeah,
see
yeah.
one hand. Preferably, you see the fake hand. So you only see the fake hand. So the first exercise that you should do is something called coordination, right?
Mhm.
So you'll have a few people involved in this experiment. So one person will touch the thumbs of both the fake and the real hand at the same time,
All right.
right? And then you will touch the index finger, and then you touch the middle finger, you touch the pinky finger, and then you'll have this freaky feeling that you will be looking at the hand. Now this is the real reason why it's important to have a fake hand, right? It has to look so realistic that you think it's your hand, right? Or semi-realistic. It cannot be can it be a monster hand? I think monster hand will also work. So the weird thing is, if you do this experiment, is that now you're looking at this hand and you have this sort of feeling that this fake hand may actually be my actual hand. It's a weird feeling. It's a weird human feeling. You're looking at a fake hand and you really think that it's your hand. Here's
Mhm.
the weird part. At the very last part, the person that has been touching your thumbs and whatever, right, to calibrate, he takes out a knife and snaps the fake hand.
Mhm.
Now, what's your reaction? It's a fake hand. Will you stay still? No. Your reaction is you flinch. You automatically pull your hand away. But
Mhm.
wait, it's a fake hand. Why do you? So I'm like, whoa. So
Okay, okay. This is what it reminds me. This is exactly. I don't know if this is a boiled down version of the philosophical idea or not. But have you ever heard of the Plato's Allegory of Cave? So Plato has this
no, no.
weird idea about so there are a few people. It's a cave, right? So there are a few people, and they're tied. They're tied facing the wall, right? There's a wall in front of them, and there's like the sunlight comes into the cave and from the back, but they are stuck in a position that they can't move. They can't move their heads even. They can only look in front. And what do they see in front of them is that they see their shadows, right? Now they can't see back, but maybe they can move their hands and legs around. So what happens is that they become accustomed, their brain becomes accustomed to mapping the positions of their own movements. Or let's put it this way, the movement of their consciousness, that when I want to move my hand, what actually moves is that shadow hand. So that's where how they are mapped. So you can do this experiment at home. Actually, here's what you do: you look in the mirror, right? You look in the mirror and you try to do something that requires coordination. Maybe write something or anything that requires coordination, and you can't do that, right? You can't do that. After some practicing, you will get accustomed to aligning and positioning your hand in the mirror, but the moment you snap out of it, you will have to readjust to controlling your real hand. So that relates it, that somewhere somehow it is possible to deceive the human brain in what we believe as the primary sensory system is. It is possible to deceive it.
yes, it's possible to receive it because the brain is easy to be fooled. But
Mhm.
sometimes the brain is also smart at adjusting. In terms of sensing, right? So we're talking about how we perceive reality and how reality is not actually reality, but it's actually perception of reality, right? That's
Mhm.
what we're talking about, right? Let me tell you another thing. Your eyesight right now, what you're looking at right now, is actually translated by your brain
Mhm.
in a way that the brain flips it upside down. Like whenever you import a photo into your laptop, right? There's an option to flip it up, right? What if I tell you that as you're looking at my name, Nabil Abdul Qadir, actually the light that is coming into your brain, into your sensor, is actually opposite. So it's like Nabil Abdul Qadir, but flip vertically.
Yeah.
It's actually true, if you've taken A-level physics, you know how lenses work, right? So what happens
I
is
have
the
tried.
light. So let's say you're looking at the tree, right? You're looking at the tree. This is the principle of lens when you take an image into a sensor. So the sensor is at the back of your eye, right? And the light has to go from the actual object into your eye. Now, the moment the light passes through the lens, it actually flips.
Mhm.
So the object is, you can see the tree and you can see the below it, the stem, right? Once it goes into our eyes, it's actually opposite. You can see on the top is the earth, and then the stem, and then the tree. The brain looks at this and says, wait, this doesn't make sense. Let's flip it so that it makes sense for my human being.
That's
Now,
actually, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
wait, wait. And nowadays we have technology, right? We have AR technology. We can have a camera attached to our eyes that can adjust color, right? Now, they actually did this experiment. The experiment is the camera looks at the outside world and flips it back. So we
Okay.
see what we're actually meant to see, which is the tree that is upside down. So they did this experiment with, I think, a guy or a few guys. And at the first few days, of course, they lose coordination. Oh, everything's upside down. But you know what? Eventually, they they accommodate to it. Eventually, that's their reality. They perceive it as how we perceive reality. It's like, okay, everything's upright. Then when they take off the glasses, then everything is upside down again. So the real world is upside down. And then they have to adjust again. So it's like, so we think that, okay, we're seeing reality, right? No, there's a lot of things that our brain is just like, hey, like here's, I'm going to change a few things just so that, it's easier for you. It's easier for you. I actually have a lot more experiments, but I'll explain more as we go along.
Okay, no, okay. This is really interesting as well as bizarre, because here's where it gets bizarre. I have a few queries about the experiment. First off, why does the brain look at a flipped image and goes like, that's wrong? And secondly, why does the brain look at a flipped image from the camera and not recorrect it twice? So I need your biomedical expertise on here.
Okay, sorry. The first one is why doesn't the brain
Why does
sorry,
the brain
can you
look at
put
a flipped image? Why does a brain look at the flipped image and think that it's wrong?
for me it's just logical, right? If you have a flipped image and you try to, let's say the apple is at the top of the tree branch, right? You want to accurately coordinate your hand, it goes up. You want to coordinate that. So
But we know that it can reverse coordinate too. Why can't it just map it in a way that you are naturally mapped to go down when you see something up? And connected to the second point, when you say that you use the glasses that shows flip images, or because here's the the piece that makes even more complicated. There is something actually a psychological phenomena called perception correction. So those,
mm,
you go to museums and you see 3D images that don't make any sense,
mm,
and the 3D structures that connect, and in endless loops or things like that, or the easiest one, you look at an image, a well recognized image. The other day I saw it's a Pepsi can, not a Pepsi, Coca-Cola. So it's red. It's red, but what happened is that the image does not have color, right? But it has some, I don't know, some barriers of pixels, some missing pixels, but there is no color. So what your brain does is it adds in color to make it, to correct it. So perception correction or color correction, it's the same phenomena as flipping the image upside down. So we know that the brain continuously tries to correct things. But
Yep,
here's
yep,
where
exactly.
it gets confusing. Why does the brain not look at an actual black and white can of Coca-Cola? Because we know that black and white Coca-Cola cans exist, right? I can just download an image, go to Photoshop, press Control, Command, Shift B, and turn it black and white, right? Why does the brain not fill
Yeah.
in color there?
Yeah, I think to answer that question, that's actually one of a psychological phenomenon. I'm not sure what's the name. There's a name for it, but our brain loves to take shortcuts. When you first came to Brunei, right? And you see, faces, or when you go to another country with a similar, let's say, race, right? Do you notice that sometimes you see people that is similar to your friends
Okay.
in your country, right? So that's what happened to me, right? I was traveling to Bangkok once, and I'm like, oh wow, that person kind of looks like my girlfriend. Oh, that person kind of looks like my friend. That person kind of looks like my friend. So it's like, but it's not. And I think what's trying to happen is my brain is like trying to connect the dots. Because
Mm-hmm.
what the brain does is it wants to do things as efficiently as possible. It wants to take shortcuts.
Yeah,
And
true.
in order to take shortcuts, you have to, like, if it sort of kind of looks like that person, it is that person, right? At first, unless you take a second glance. Similar to, like, sometimes we have these, like, those grammatical challenges where you read a
Mm-hmm.
sentence and then there's actually the,
Yeah.
but you don't notice at first. It's
Okay.
just we just want to read it as quickly as possible, and I think it's just the brain is like, no,
One
no, no,
one
you
similar
didn't see
one
that.
similar phenomena that I know, and we here's the problem, right? So one similar phenomena that I know, I think it's called Peridola or something, object Peridola. Maybe you've heard of it. So we see objects that don't have a shape in it, but the brain tries to make a face out of it, right? So anywhere you see any sort of symmetry, the brain is like, okay, that's the eyes, that's the ears. So we do that. So I was really interested in this, and I took the typical path I take with every science, evolution. So so I look it up
Yeah,
into the evolutionary side of the science, and it's actually an actual evolutionary advantage, because the idea is that the brain is like, maybe there is a predator hiding in the stuff, so it tries to actively look for faces. So it makes sense, right?
mm,
So when you say that the brain is trying to correct things, my understanding is, I don't know, I'm a fan of evolution or something. My understanding is that it's doing that on purpose, right? Because I want to compare it, that okay, I can see a face in something, but I take another look, oh, it's not actually there. So once the brain is like, oh, there's no danger, you look closely, there's no danger, oh, the face is not there anymore, right? So it eliminates that. So the way I want to see it is that if there is no advantage to correcting it, the brain does not. Like, similar to how you said that it tries to take
yeah,
shortcuts. So I think what really means by shortcut is this the most helpful path? Is it
yeah,
like, does it help? Does it serve any purpose? So that's why, you can see a black and white Coca-Cola can, but from afar, that just doesn't make sense. Maybe it quickly refills the world with the colors that you're used to see. So something about these lines, something that, and I don't know, frankly, I don't know if there is
no, no,
enough
no, no, no,
research to actually prove it, to
no, no.
fill that gap.
Your argument is correct. We don't perceive it as it is, and we use it. Our brain uses it to our advantage. Somebody,
Mhm.
like, why is it advantageous? Okay, number one, The faster we recognize there's faces, the faster we know that there's a lion hiding in the bushes that's gonna kill us, right?
Yeah.
And number two, if we're trying to hunt for maybe, for example, a specific kind of mushroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll go to the forest, we're like, okay, done. The sun is going down, the predators are coming out soon. Crap, I better hunt as many mushrooms as I can. Okay, that looks like a mushroom, that looks like a mushroom. Pick, 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 pick. And then only at the later stage, then
Mm-hmm.
we use our better consciousness to actually, okay, this is not the actual mushroom. This is not. But in that moment, in that rush of time, we need to make decisions quick before predators come out. So maybe again, it's survival. But I like to add in sometimes it's not just about evolution. Maybe there's other things at play, but I think evolution
True,
is one
true,
of the
true.
easiest things to,
Yeah.
to explain it,
It
right?
just
But
makes
let's
sense.
just be aware for the sake of, for the sake of our argument. Yeah, there are other things,
I
but
mean, yeah,
I'll be happy to
I,
explore it.
I get that. I get a lot of I get a lot of criticism, like why is everything evolution? And I am so glad that you back me up on this. When I use evolution as an example, that's like the easiest, most fundamental
Easiest.
example. But it evolves, in every single. So, for example, we were talking about. So there's actually this entire science about logos, marketing. So certain colors of a brain is,
Yeah, color
yellow or
psychology.
red, yellow and red. These are cautionary colors.
Fast food.
That's why you see that the car lights, stop lights, they are yellow and red. So brands and markets, they use certain colors and certain objects and certain shapes to make it more recognizable. And it's just that we present it like this. Oh, look at the brands doing this devious act of getting attention. But if you look at it, if you reverse it, it's like your brain is also getting, because you are actively looking for Starbucks. So your brain is programmed, it sees anything resembling green and something, it's like, oh, that this is Starbucks. So I think that's also kind of like an evolutionary tactic. So it's basically the brain adjusting to the environment. But what I
Yeah.
find, I would say, problematic is that why does it not do it all the time? Like, if I see a flipped image of myself, if I see a flipped version of the world, which I am technically already seeing, but the brain is reversing it. So why is it not actually reversing a reversed image? That's what I'm interested in. Maybe there's some
So
layer of neuroscience. I don't know.
so you will I mean, I think in all OGDC or the I don't want the oil and gas science center something. There's this mirror that they have, and it's a concave mirror, and
Mm-hmm.
what it does is that it flips you upside down, right? So I think the question is, what? So I'm living in an upside down world right now, and my
Yeah.
brain is making it upright. So why is it that
The
when
more
I'm
important
standing
part
in
is
front?
the
Hmm,
more important part is that when the brain looks at the world that is upside down, it goes like that's wrong. It should actually be like this, right? So when it actually sees something that is already flipped, why does it not go like, oh, this is wrong, let me fix it?
no, maybe we're talking about different. Maybe the overall function of the brain doing it flipped is when it's universal, right? Maybe if it's selective, it won't be as useful.
So like the mirror,
Maybe if
like the VR you were mentioning, that
maybe
makes.
if the VR thing is it's universal, right? The entire thing that you see, your entire field of vision, because essentially that's everything that's affected, right? The entire thing that's affected is universal. The light that's coming into your eyes, that's universal. It's not selective, flipping. So maybe if only if universal. But in fact, you know what? It'd be interesting if we actually get our hands on the glasses, and like,
Yeah,
Salman and Nabil one day like flip. What
people
would
would
happen?
people would think we are drunk because it's
The-
getting into
yeah,
this. Yeah.
there's actually people who, I mean, I saw a YouTube video of someone using VR glasses for a week. So he has like
Okay.
3 4 VR glasses, and every like he'll only change it to recharge or something, and he'll close his eyes, hand swap, and then on the very last day he's like, oh wow, reality's graphics are so great. Oh wow, so high quality. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like there are some gaps, that some part of the piece is missing that we don't know, or maybe I just don't, we don't know it yet enough, that what does the brain choose to correct and what does the brain not choose to correct. So perception, it works really in that manner, like hallucinations, drugs, for example. So I think it connects back to when we were talking about simulation of sensors and things like that. So the idea is that um, you feel an external object that inflicts some sort of reaction, that triggers some sort of reaction in your brain. So, like, like somebody mentioned, we love to talk about dopamine. So we're eating burgers, right? So it's like, oh, dopamine, you feel good. You're like, such a good burger, right? But if you take a drug that does the same thing, or other chemicals that make you feel certain things, anxious, I think that's how painkillers work, right? They just reverse, you're feeling a pain, but they just, I don't know how what's the science, they just make it numb, right? So the idea being that, like what you mentioned, that what if we can make the body or the brain illusionize that, okay, deceive it that these are the sensors that you're receiving right now, and it's not actually doing that, but certain pills or certain machines that can do that. So the brain will know, okay, the brain will just accept it, and you will feel that. And that's why you see that when people take drugs, or when people take other sort of intoxicants, they feel very similar sensory reactions as to how they would uh, if they actually take the same amount of, let's say, dose of what that chemical is. So it's something about the brain getting easily deceived at one side, and something about the brain not knowing. So in on the right end, it's like the brain gets deceived, right? You give it a pill and it thinks it's food, and it's like, oh, I'm satisfied, you don't want food anymore, like, just giving an example. And in the middle, there's like, brain is like, oh, this doesn't look good, I'll correct it. But on the other side, there are things that are blatantly wrong. It's an upside down mirror, but the brain does not fix it. So this is something about the spectrum that bugs me. That
I mean, for the half mirror thing, like as in there are some things that it selectively does not flip out. I think it all depends on usefulness. How useful is it to selectively flip things, and
Mhm.
how difficult is it? We know that in computers it's already hard to frame every single thing. Like we look at things and we edit it out, and then we have to flip it. You know how much processing power it takes. Maybe it's not that efficient. So
Okay, yeah, that's
aside from the
interesting.
argument of it having to be universal, another argument is maybe it's not so efficient to keep on flipping. Yeah, so that's one argument. So another way to think about this, right, is like this. So every single thing that we're experiencing, right, is sensing. We
Mhm.
can know things, but so far, don't you feel like the things that we know, for example, how how does truffle taste like? How does truffle taste like? Okay, I'll go to some rich people, and I'll ask, how does truffle taste like? And they'll tell me, oh yeah, it's like mushrooms but saltier. Okay, I can picture a salty mushroom. I based
Mhm.
it on my experience from a mushroom and from salt. I'll mix it together. I'm like, okay, I think I get it. And then
Okay.
once I actually take it, maybe because we have thousands of taste buds, right? Maybe it will activate a taste bud that has never been activated by any mushroom. So in that case, yeah, it's like a mushroom that's salty, but it is so much more. That sensor that has never been updated is now updated. It's now receiving that sensor. Okay, so fine. So you can argue that you can have all the knowledge about the world, but for me, it's still about experience, and the experience is at the mercy. It's at the mercy of that sensor being activated. Let's think about it this way: we have the brain, and we
Mhm.
have, let's say, I mean, I'm pretty sure we have 10,000, more than 10,000 sensors, right? Uh, it's not just our hearing. We can hear different music, right? Different tunes, different depths, different bass. It's not just a taste. It's also a taste of mushroom, a taste of garlic. All these things have different taste. It's not just wetness, it's also like heat. So all these different senses, let's say it's 10,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we can list down all those 10,000 senses, theoretically, we can, we can take out the brain, we extract all these senses, and we come up with 10,000 buttons. We make it into 10,000 physical buttons. I
Mm-hmm.
press a button, Nabil sees one tiny red dot pixel at the corner of his eye, right? I
Okay.
press one tiny button, Nabil hears 60 hertz of a sound for 1 second in his, in his right ear, right? And then
Don't give Elon Musk ideas.
I clear a lot more. Oh wow, I'm starting to see different things, right? So
Okay.
I think all this is sensing, is experiencing. So you can say, you can read, you can have, I can tell you if you're colorblind, oh, this is what the color red looks like. But if from your side you've never pushed those buttons, you can never really know. And to add on to that, how can you compare, right? How can you compare? Let's say 10,000, we all have both the same amount of sensors.
You're right.
Let's start from me having 10,000 sensors, you having 10,000 sensors. I might have already activated 6,000 sensors, right? And you might only activated 1,000. As much as I tell you stuff, how can you comprehend the other 4,000 that you haven't experienced? And then I'll take a drug, and one of the people that I follow is Sam Harris. He's a neuroscientist, and he talked about psychedelics. He always likes to talk about psychedelics, and he would tell in his podcast about his experience with drugs. He would take LSD or psilocybin, and he said, "There's another conscious dimension out there, right? Your consciousness has different levels." And I'm just sitting there listening to the podcast, right? And I'm like, what? The only consciousness that I know is me asleep, me dreaming, me awake. That's it,
Mhm.
nothing more. But he says, no, there's a whole new universe where 1 minute can feel like half an hour and an eternity. And, the opposite, 30 minutes can feel like a second using these drugs. And I can never experience that because there's those buttons that on his side he has pushed, and those buttons that I haven't pushed. And let's put it further. For that experiment that I used just now, I assume that both of us has 10,000 sensors. What if I have 10,000 and Salman, you have only 100? So no matter how hard you try, you will never be able to feel how I feel. You'll never be able to explain. You will never, I will show you the color red, but you will see the same thing because those sensors never existed to you in the first place. So going back to original point, do we see the world differently? I think it depends on, all these different things. You have different sensors and you have different things that touch the sensors. So I think it's
Actually,
just,
there are two things that you mentioned, and I think like one of them is very important to just to make, because it's very distinct than the idea that I was trying to comprehend. Now, when you talk about sensors that do not exist, I think that is a very sound argument, right? It's like it reminds me. I don't know if you know, like if you send, like let's use a simpler example. You send like not a 3D, but like 1600 DPI resolution image to a screen that can only show 300. So something about compatibility, something about if you send a live photo to an Android user, so something about compatibility, that is, I think, very sound an argument, right? So I think your idea that the base assumption is that we have the same sensors or not is very important, and that connects back to your point about animals and us having different experiences. So like the different retinal components that our eye has. It's very different from the sensors and the other components, the biological components that other animals have. So they see the world differently because they have, let's just say, physical, biological components that we don't, or at least not in the same way, right? So I think on the base, that is a very sound argument. So, like, for example, the person who does not have the ability to hear or to see, you can never explain to him what seeing feels like because he does not have the ability to see, right? So he cannot push those sensors, right? Because they don't exist. It's like, it's error 404. But here's where it gets, a little bit in the gray, right? Here's where I'm thinking, like, okay, there's a sensor in your brain, but you cannot activate it, and that can only be activated by an external experience. That is something that I don't agree with, because here's how I see. You're talking about the sensors being converted into a machine, like thousands of, so the keyboard, so it maps to every sensor. If you have a machine in front of you that activates a sensor each button, so what that means essentially is that you have access to all your sensors, right? So like the base assumption is eliminated that the sensors exist. So every single sensor that exists, you have access to it in this hypothetical machine. So I think of brain as that machine, right? And it's just about pressing that button and figuring out what it takes to press that button. So that's how I think that that somehow it's possible, like how we talk about the Mary's room experiment. So Mary is someone who can see color, she can see color, and
she has the sensor.
She has the sensor, and let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that black and white are the two colors that she has seen, so she knows what experiencing a color is like. So now this is what I'm trying to think, that if the knowledge is to a level of saturation, right? This was the original point, that because our knowledges are very limited, the way we absorb knowledge is very limited. The way we tap into our brain, how much control we have over our brain is very limited. But what if we have knowledge to the point, and let's break down knowledge. Let's say that I know this is the wavelength of red, right? But I also know how exactly to send a signal to my brain or my retinal system to process red. Then I'm sure I can see or feel red without actually seeing red. So something about capacity being there, but either the knowledge or the access, the admin privileges are not given to the brain. We cannot actively control what sensors do we press. And like you said, that we are at the mercy of sensory experiences to actually activate those sensors, right? Some external experience. So I can't help but wonder that what if we have enough access to our brain that we can actually tap into these sensors, right? So I think that was the original idea. You mentioned another idea about Sam, that he talked about how there are different layers of consciousness, right? And I'm really surprised that he talked about this, because the metaphysical world of mysticism actually talks about this, and it talks about this in a very, very vivid way. And that's why I said that I'm surprised Sam talked about it, because Sam might not agree with our world of metaphysics, as much as he would like to. But,
he's a neuroscientist.
I
so
know
maybe it's
Sam
that part.
Harris. He's more, I know Sam Harris. I've read his work. And that's why I say maybe he would not agree, with all due respect, to the world of metaphysics. He's a thinker. So that's why I said that it's interesting that he mentioned that point, and that that's what grabbed my attention. That when you talk about layers of consciousness, these subjects of metaphysics, they actually talk about the layers of consciousness, and that concept became so huge that it made its way into philosophy, that I also want to discuss. So the concept about the layers of consciousness is very interesting to me. Here's how we read it in mysticism, in metaphysics, that it is a very good example. And sometimes I believe, because with subjects like ontology and metaphysics, there's so much word play, so much words, that it doesn't
Mm,
convey the message. So what I like to do is I like to jump to the examples. So here's the
mm,
example that we use. So you hear that there's fire somewhere, right?
mm,
What is your level of belief? So let's say it's not coming from a credible source, zero point 0.1, right? But then every news channel is posting that there is fire in the forest. Your level of
mm,
belief increases, right?
mm, mm,
Everybody
mm,
talks
mm,
about it. Your level of belief increases, right?
mm,
Now, somebody you meet has seen the fire and he tells you, I saw it with my eyes. Your level of
mm,
belief increases so
mm,
much more, right? Now, the last stage of level of belief, you see the fire yourself,
mm,
right?
mm,
Okay, let's break
mm,
it down. You see the smoke, 99, right? But then you see the fire itself, 100%. One would say 100, right? Is there any way you could make it even more,
you
believable?
touch
You're
the
seeing the
fire and your hand is
you touch the
burning,
fire.
right?
You touch the fire, right? You touch the fire, and you experience it. So let's say it's a more vivid example, but touch and see are the same thing because you perceive it from senses, right? You perceive it from your
Mm,
senses. But yes, it's more vivid and dramatic. So you touch the fire, 100% belief that there is fire. Could it
mm.
talk? Could there be something more?
Uh, okay, this is.
Like
Have you
you
seen
get burned.
Ready Player One?
Yeah, I have seen Red Blue. Yeah, yeah,
You do this and you don't have glasses. Oh, okay. I'm not in
yeah,
metaverse. Okay,
yeah.
okay. I'm
So
not
you
in
double check,
metaverse.
yeah. You double check, you're burning and you're 100% sure there is fire. So
You start yourself. You're not
touch yourself,
dreaming.
like, if this is a dream, pinch me. But all that is eliminated already because you're burned. So it's very real, right? But
Okay. Yep. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
here's where
Yep.
it gets interesting. So they say there is one more layer of belief. You know what that is? You are fire. If you embody fire, the level of belief that you will have that fire exists is far superior than anything that you can experience from your senses. Okay, let me expand it, and this will connect back to our topic very,
I'm
very
fire.
vivid. Yeah, I'll tell you. Here's how it works, right? So you talked in the very beginning, you talk about the concept that you don't know. Maybe you are the only one who exists in the universe, and everything else is
Mm,
just
mm,
a
mm, mm, mm.
stimulation. So it's not a bizarre concept. That's an actual thing that exists. So in philosophy, if I'm not mistaken, it's called solipsism, right? So solipsism is the idea that you are the only one that exists, and everything else you see is maybe you're not sure what it is. But
Mm.
so in the spectrum of existential crisis in existential philosophy, all these ideas come. There's a very interesting idea called last Thursdaysm. The idea states that, what if the entire universe was created last Thursday? There is
Yeah.
no
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
scientific, no philosophical, no ontological, no metaphysical concept that can, counter it. What if everything, the world, the universe, the concepts, the written histories, the rocks with carbon
Yeah.
dating,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything, last Thursday, or 1 hour ago, you can't battle
Yeah.
it, right? You can't battle it.
Yeah.
What if everything doesn't like it? So these concepts exist. Why are they important to discuss, especially in this conversation of experience? Because the only thing, right, the only thing that can differ how you think, because when you see, like I was talking, right, even if you see fire yourself, there is 0.1% chance that it's not true, right? What if at the end of the day there was a very realistic hologram, right? So even if you see or
Yeah. Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
it, there's
Maybe
still
I'm in the
zero.
Matrix.
the
And it's
matrix,
the
for
matrix
example.
fire.
So, like, the point is that you are perceiving it through your senses, right? But these senses are simulated artificial. That is the base idea, right?
Mm, mm.
So there's always 0.1% doubt on the existence of the things that you perceive and see. So this is the idea that philosophers, struggle with for a very long time. So other philosophers discussed it in a more, I would say, transcending manner. But here comes René Descartes, the French, one of the one of
Descartes.
the most important figures in existential philosophy. And he says the most iconic, like, in the history of philosophy after the God is dead. He says, listen to this very carefully. I think,
I think, therefore I am.
therefore I am. And it solves all the problems, right? Like, how would you know that you're not in a matrix? Because you can think that you're not in a matrix. So the consciousness of consciousness, the consciousness being conscious, is the proof that cannot be battled with any sensory experience. All sensory experiences can be deceived, but the only experience that cannot be deceived is the consciousness questioning consciousness. Here is a small personal proof. You will never ever in your dream question if this is a dream. That doesn't happen. You get me, right? If you're in a dream, you will never ever think, oh, am I in a dream?
Sometimes I think I'm in a dream and then I fly. Like, I'm gonna fly there. I'm just gonna fly. I'm in a dream. What do you think about that? Like,
I mean, you're lucid dreaming, right? Your brain is still,
yeah.
it's imagination or drugs, I don't know. But that's not a dream, right?
But actually, I like the reason why I like that quote is because you mentioned to me once, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's that's actually quite profound. But when you explained it to me last time, it was something else. It was about a different topic, but I forgot what it is. But I think, therefore I am. I think it's solving another quote, right? It's solving another philosophical problem. I forgot what we discussed last time, but it was solving another difficult problem, that Descartes solved. Um,
I don't remember, but yes, it encompasses a huge umbrella, but the idea remains existentiality, right? So the
well,
existentiality, that who am, if I exist at all, how do I know I exist? That is the problem that it solves.
or how do I know I exist? I exist. So if a computer program asks itself,
Yeah.
"Do I exist?" Therefore, it exists. Are you saying that? Is that a fact based on that quote?
Now, so can a computer program ask, why do I?
No, but the moment it becomes more intelligent and it asks itself that, is that the
Okay,
moment where
okay.
computers
Let's
become?
talk about the present. As of right now, can this, this browser window, this ask, oh, why do I exist? No, right?
No, 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 no.
No program written today can ask, why do I exist? And
Hmm.
Descartes' conclusion is, this is why that is not real. That is a simulation. Like, quite
Hmm.
literally, it's a simulation.
Hmm.
That is
Hmm.
why in the world of artificial intelligence, the point at which an artificial intelligence becomes self-conscious, if we don't know where to go from there, because that is the only thing that, according to Descartes and others also, differentiates human beings from all other creatures. So
Hmm.
essentially, Descartians believe that animals don't question, why am I
Hmm.
alive, right? So
Hmm.
the proof that your consciousness is conscious is something that is unique to human beings. And that is why there's a huge talk about
Uh,
all this artificial intelligence, reaching that level that it asks, what is my purpose and what am I conscious? That is the point forward where we don't know where to go from there, and that is why it's such an haunting idea to
uh,
even think, because in
mhm.
all recorded human history, No such thing, no other thing has ever asked, why am I alive, except human
Mm.
beings.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Elon Musk has been talking about it. He said um, uh, like he said human beings are just the stepping stone for AI. So there's this program that you for early computers, right? Before you boot the computer, you have to boot some sort of program. I don't know it's called. So let's call it booting program. I've got the actual name,
BIOS.
booting
It's
program.
called BIOS.
No, it's not. It's not BIOS. It's I don't know. It's booting something, and you boot that to boot the actual computer. And
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk said that human beings is basically the booting program for the actual
Okay.
AI. We're just a stepping stone. So once we're here, AI will, take over everything, and then we won't be of use. So I'm like, oh wow, so maybe our purpose is to make AI, and maybe the reason why it's so intimidated by it is because of our, you know, evolutionary instinct to always make everything humans and not anything else. So, oh, interesting, and maybe the thing
Here's
that
how
we
I
talked
look at it.
about, Neuralink, Elon Musk is making that,
Yeah,
sensors
yeah, yeah,
into the
yeah.
brain.
But here's like where the brain of my mind is like. This is why I'm not convinced or flattered or haunted at all by this Elon Musk's idea, because the very basic question, why? Like, what's the point? Why do you think that human beings? Uh, I don't know if Elon believes this or not, but like the idea when you say that stepping stone for AI is that so the AI will become fully conscious and then it will erase humanity or something. That's the idea, and that's why people they're so frightened with AI. And this is what I believe is bizarre. Why is your first thought when you talk about a self-conscious being is that it will destroy everything, including what created it? I don't know where it comes from.
I have the answers there. I have the answers to that. So, if you look at Terminator, right, classic
Hmm.
movie. In fact, Elon Musk talking about it. Now you know that I watched a lot of Elon Musk videos. So, Skynet, apparently, the reason why it decided to kill human beings was that when it was programmed, they specifically told it, okay, Skynet, kill everything that is, a threat to you, right? Kill
Hmm.
everything that is a threat to you. And, you know, eventually it calculates and it realizes, oh, actually, human beings are a threat to us. So that's when it starts to kill human beings. So it's like, it's
Here's
not
what
that
doesn't connect. Here is what
it,
doesn't connect
it,
for
it
me.
doesn't have the intention. It was just following orders. And it became like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
following orders.
I no see that's the thing. That's the basic story of every generic AI movie, right? So in Avengers, they give it a political twist, but the idea remains same that human beings are the problem, right? So a lot of problems with this premise. First off, why? Why do you think you're the problem? Okay, like it's bizarre. Once again, the tendency to think that you are the problem. I sometimes go through YouTube and I'm like, people are like, human being is the cancer of Earth, and I'm just like, okay, I'm like, okay, like it connects to the consciousness idea, right? The tendency to question your own existence. That is something that is very unique to human beings, I believe. Like, okay, other than that, okay, wait.
Uh, the tendency to question things, right? So when we talk about AI, right now, I mean, I'm not sure if you want to step into this part of the conversation, but we talk about AI. We talk about, will AI take over? Will AI be smarter than humans? Right? And
Okay,
the
right there,
argument.
these are two different questions, right?
Okay, okay, you
See,
wanna
that is my main criticism to this whole AI thing, and I think it's very
oh
important to discuss this because of the consciousness problem. Here's the thing, right? There are two different things, according to me. That's how I see it.
okay
One part of the picture is AI will be so strong that it can snap us away. It can wipe us. Okay, you're
okay
like,
okay
okay,
okay
fair enough.
okay
I'm pretty sure machines are already there. I'm pretty sure we have like machines that can, uplift homes and stuff. So I mean, technically, there are machines that are capable of wiping humanity, technically speaking. But
mm,
here's the
mm.
thing. One idea is that they will become so strong or so unstoppable or something. But then on the other side, and this idea, okay, so this is like very strong, right? And this is the turning point, which is they will become self-conscious, right? They will question. And when you say self-conscious, you say things like they will question what is the point of their existence, etc. But then you make a 180, and then you say that, oh, they're only killing humans because that's what their program is. So I think that questions, we question life. That's why we are neither we are neither violently killing all living things, neither are we peacefully, coexisting with everything, because we question life. We discussed this about the purpose of life earlier, right? So other things, they can just, they know what to do, right? They kill because they have to eat. They know what to do. When you reach that stage where you don't know what to do or you question life, that's where you become, confused. So I think the first thing AI would do if it gets consciousness is, I don't know, get a drink or something. It will be in problem. It will be like, what? Why did you create me? So if it kills you, it kills you out of frustration. Like, why did you create me?
Okay, let me counter your points. Yeah, let's say, like, for the sake of argument, we don't have to make the AI conscious, right? Let's
Okay.
say consciousness is so special to human beings that AI will never be conscious,
Yeah, then that's not an AI.
right? Let's see that. No. We already have AI. So, for example, right, we use AI for facial recognition, right? Is it conscious? No, it's not
No.
conscious. It's just using machine learning,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Machine learning
Let's
is,
talk
I think,
about
is a better term. Machine learning. When you say
machine
artificial
learning.
intelligence, the idea is like, or at least the top level of artificial intelligence is on par with human intelligence, right? Like human
Okay.
intelligence artificially created. So I think machine learning is like a more, I don't know, easy to go
Okay.
with.
Sure. Advanced machine learning. So
Okay.
right now we know that computers are getting smarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I think. The main thing that I'm trying to say here is, in the end, the computer is a tool, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a tool that gets exponentially more powerful over time. That
Okay.
the cost of human beings' demise is not the machine; it's our human error in using the machine. It's so powerful. It's just a huge gun, and it'll just tiny people, and you're just like, imagine a tiny rat holding a nuclear bomb and just trying to manage that. It's so powerful that you will eventually fire the weapon, right? It's so
Yeah.
powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That's my main analogy. How do we come to that? It's simple. Number one is that, I mean, this is from Sam Harris' video. Yeah. Number one is, we should acknowledge that information, any thinking is information processing, right? We're
Okay.
just processing information. Our brain is basically processing information. Consciousness is processing information, right? And number two is that computers will progress over time. It
Mm-hmm.
gets even more powerful, right? Every year there's a new iPhone, and every year, I mean, Moore's law, right? So Moore's law states that for every year, if you buy $1,000 phone right now, next year for the same $1,000, you can buy a phone with twice the speed. So because the number of transistors, per square meter, per square nanometer will double the transistors.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the nano, from 14 nanometer to 10 nanometer to 8
Yeah.
nanometer, and then people are talking about 3 crazy. It was impossible, but they managed to do it. Crazy, right? um it keeps getting faster and faster, right? And number three, it keeps getting faster every year.
Mm-hmm.
Either computers get faster every year, or something happens that causes human beings to go into a world war that halts the innovation of chips. So just consider all these three, and you already have a trajectory curve that machines will eventually be so powerful that a kid with a computer can just type in potentially like nuke America, and an actual machine will type, will a bomb will come out of the ground and nuke America. So it will be that powerful. So maybe that will be the end of the. We don't need an AI. Human
Mhm.
beings are already dumb enough to hurt itself. And here's another thing: you sometimes it's hard to see how intelligent things are. For example, right? It's hard to think of someone more intelligent than us, right? It's really hard to think. It's only after someone comes along and he speaks so fast and he reads the book that you read in 30 minutes compared to like 2 days, and he's just scrolling through that, and he can read any date on the calendar, and he can do complex maths, and he has win Nobel prizes, and he's so articulate. Only when that person in front of us, then we're like, oh crap, oh damn, that person is so smart, right? So it's hard to measure intelligence. But imagine this: the smartest computers can process so much information that all the world's knowledge can just be processed by a snap of his fingers.
Mhm.
And by that account, he can guess your bank account number, your password, your family history. He can theoretically, there will be a computer that can scan you once and know all of your life history and know the trajectory of your predicted, how many people will you marry, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Amazing, right? Imagine that power just in the hands of a reckless human being. To be honest, I think that's how humanity will end. We're just so dumb. We're just
Okay,
like, oh,
I see two different things here, right? Once again, I think there's a very, I would say, blurry, but there's a split in the topic, right? Like the problem diverges into two different problems. Here's how I see it. Now, the premise of our problem was the problem of consciousness, right? I think we and collectively we human beings cannot decide if the problem is consciousness or if it is power, right? Like, what about, okay, personally, if I see a robot, a machine that is conscious, and now my definition of consciousness is self-conscious, which means that it can question, I think, therefore I am, right? So it can question the purpose of life, who am I, who created me. This is my definition of consciousness, right? Because all other things, including animals, including machines, currently present machines, they can do machine learning, right, at best. So it's, they're doing everything, algorithm and stuff, but it's not really conscious. It's just following a set of pre-written algorithm, right? And that's how I see animals also. And before you go, oh, that's how I think Descartes saw animals also. So by differentiating that human beings are the only one that are self-conscious, meaning that we are the only one that can question life. You see, animals, including machines, all other things, they perform their functions as preset guidelines as machines, and they don't question life. So, like, this is the first distinction, that consciousness is questioning, and the other thing is just machine learning. So, for me, it's two different things. So, I want to know, what is the problematic part? Is consciousness the problematic part for machines, or is getting really powerful, the machine learning part getting really powerful, the part of the problem? The way I see it, if I see, a machine, if Siri wakes up tomorrow and is like, hey Salman, what is the purpose of my life? I will be scared. I will be scared. And it's a huge different topic why consciousness is problematic. But if I have to summarize it, it's like, look at us. Like I said earlier, at one spectrum, we can, kill all living things on earth. At another spectrum, we are peaceful and we have done things that maybe, other living creatures all combined could not have done. So, like, if I just have to simplify it, a being that is self-conscious is unpredictable because it's self-conflicting. And Peterson, he mentions a very interesting topic that that was lost. We read this in theology, in doctrinal theology, religious doctrine, and it was lost for so many years. And I was so glad that Peterson mentions it. So he talks about, the topic was about divine spark. It's a very interesting lecture. Who dares says he believes in God? It's 2 hour lecture on YouTube. Like it's really helpful if you're interested in like religious doctrine or that stuff. So when he talks about that stuff, he talks about how human beings. So the idea of divine spark is that, oh, there's some sort of intercession from divine, some sort of
Yep. Yep.
interference from
Yep.
divine in human actions.
Yep.
So that's one part. The other part is your rationality that says you should, go to work, you should do something productive. But the other part is your I don't know, your animal instinct that says, nah, just rest, it feels good. So, the point being that we are a conflicting creature, right? We are not
Yep.
as simple as, if time is equal to 7, go to work. That's how I think machines work. That's how
Yep.
I would assume animals work. Animals
Yep.
don't care if it's society and stuff. Your dog will start humping in front of the guest and something, and you're like, what are you doing? They don't
Mm.
care, right? At best you can be like, oh no, I trained my dog. I mean, let me stop you right there. You didn't train your dog. Your dog is like, if I do this here, I don't get treats, or I get
That
beaten.
is what training is, right? That is what training is,
But
basically.
still, it's following a set of algorithms.
Yep.
He does not know it's morally not okay. It's unethical to do that. He does not know that. So it's still a machine, right? So
Yeah.
that's how I differentiate it. Now, like coming back to
Yep.
the idea that human beings are not like that. We are like, I would say, we are conflicted. We are expanded. We are like a combination of different consciousnesses living in ourselves. And Peterson mentions this, and this is something like really, really interesting. And once again, I'm really glad that that area of religious doctrine has started coming back into philosophy. So Peterson talks about how Aristotle, he had an inner monologue in himself, right? He used to say, and you can find this in the writings of Plato and
Daemon, is it?
Xenophon. Sorry,
Inner daemon. Is that
inner
one?
demon. Yeah, it's somebody inside. It's like there's a voice in my head that talks to me, that says things to me, right? And to the point it reaches, and you can be like, oh yeah, that's when we think, we do that. But for
Mm-hmm.
Aristotle's case, it reaches to the point that he's sentenced to death, and at the night he's talking to his inner Damien, and Aristotle is like, I want to run away, and the inner voice is like, no, stay. That contradicts all rationality. They're going to kill you in the morning, right? And they're actually letting you run away. They just wanted to get rid of him. So but he stays, and they kill him. So coming back to the point that we have contradicting ideas, we're
Yeah.
not one conscious being. That's what.
Yeah.
And one of them idea is self-consciousness, which is questioning consciousness. So that's something that makes us very unique, and this is why, which results in unpredictability. You look at how different
Mm-hmm.
human beings are. Maybe the routine of your father, your routine, your friend's routine, it's so different. It's so different. You pick one of them. If all human beings were like this, we would either already be in extent or something. You see some people extremely disciplined, military soldiers and stuff, and because of them, the rest of us live in peace. So the idea being that there is a huge spectrum of what we as humans are, and we are unpredictable. This is why my personal idea is that if I see a being conscious, self-conscious, I will be terrified, because it's unpredictable. I don't know what it's going to do, right? It's unpredictable. So
Mm.
that is the consciousness part that is problematic.
Yeah.
The other part you mentioned is machines getting powerful. And I think the only verdict that I see there is authority. Like, think of it this way. I imagine, somebody accidentally invented fire, and everybody was like, this thing is going to kill us. This is going to destroy mankind. I'm pretty sure that's a real thing that happened. Fun fact: in 1800 or something, when newspaper was invented, there's a headline in the newspaper itself: "Newspapers, will it be the end of humanity?" And and the headline's tagline was that there are a lot of people reading newspapers all the time. There were some accidents, people crossing road reading newspapers. Like now, you are on the phones. So like that's a small side topic, that everything that is new is always challenged. We fear what we
Yeah.
don't know just because it's new. So, authority can be a thing. Like currently we have nuclear missiles, and I am pretty sure you just need to, add a password or something. But who's giving it to kids? Trump needs to press a button on his table, you know, to launch nuclear missiles, but nobody's giving them to kids. So, like the internet, there's a huge debate. I'm going on and on, I know.
No, no, no,
But
no. Continue.
the idea is, um, authority and control, right? So there's this debate that should internet be policed, right? Should certain people be allowed? What kind of content should be allowed? Should it be monitored? Cyberbullying, things like that. So the problem. So I this is the summary. Consciousness problematic. Why? Because it's unpredictable, right? But
Yeah.
overpowered. Something is overpowered. I don't think so. That's problematic. That's only problematic when it goes to the wrong hands. So I think authority and control is, what's important there. So this is my outlook on this AI problem.
Hmm. So I like that you mentioned those points. To counter the second point, right? Authority. Yeah, there's uh there's an American quote. Actually, it's from Captain America. No, from Iron Man. From Iron Man. And Iron Man said this. Iron Man said, "Peace means having a bigger gun than the other guys."
Yeah.
Which means that as long as the other guy has nukes, as long as you have a bigger nuke, I mean, the other guy is
Yeah.
North
Yeah. Yeah.
Korea, but as long as you have like America is looking at North Korea like, what are you talking about? I have
Yeah.
like more nukes to blow. I have more nukes to blow up your entire country tenfold. Okay, your entire hectare of land. What are you talking about? We're not threatened.
Yeah.
Amazing
Yeah.
power,
That's
right?
problematic, right? But yeah, I think when machines get overpowered, what you can do, like you said, how how small an impact, how small a button you have to press to change a huge impact, right? So I think I don't think so that's necessarily problematic. I think that's just part of, once again, when fire was invented, there's an old saying, fire is a good servant but a bad master, right? So just don't,
Mm,
you just have to control things. I don't think so that we can be frightened or hindered by progress just because, oh, what if it gets into wrong hand? I don't think so. That's
mm.
how humanity has come this far.
Of course, but there are some risks that people have to take. For example, right, for COVID, I mean, I know we're derailing a bit here, but for example, for COVID, right, some people think that it's from a lab, and this lab it's using a biological process. I don't know what I forgot what's the name, but it's a process of rapidly evolving the virus so that it rapidly mutates, right?
Mhm.
Now, when you hear mutation, okay, you might be thinking, oh, all mutation is bad, right? Actually, no, mutation is all natural. Every single cell in the world mutates. It's just that sometimes this process mutates it to get a specific direction, and then it escapes, and then it becomes the COVID-19. Now,
Mhm.
it's just a it's just a theory. It's just a theory, but
Yeah.
it has solid evidence behind it. I think now they're already reviewing like, hey, is this method safe? So I think yes, you're right, maybe we shouldn't think too much about it, but I
Mhm.
think as human beings, as a society, we should at least consider the risk. That is why people like Elon Musk and other people, they do think that AI will have an impact, and now they actually have like think tanks specific to
Mhm.
AI, just to think about like AI, what it should do, what are the kill switches, who should have power, all this stuff. So we think about AI,
Okay.
but I don't think we should be too complacent. Like, it's just a newspaper. I think there should be a risk management behind it. In terms of intelligence, right? You're right. Who's gonna give a baby a switch? Okay. Okay. I'll admit you that's a really good point. Who would give a baby a switch? But you also have the effect of, the effect of social media right now. You just your I mean, you talk about the elections in the US, and you can have one person just send out a tweet. So
Mhm.
what happened was, there's this guy that just tweeted out, like, from nobody, right? Zero tweets, just created a new account. And the tweet was, uh, I just took a box full of voting mail and just burned it. So theoretically, he just goes to a voting station, take out a box full of people's votes, and burn it down. So all the votes are gone, right? So all people's hard works on voting is gone for that big box. And people
Mhm.
were so upset about it, and it went over the internet, and it changes the polling system. You know, but it's only one guy. It's only one guy. It's like, and then actually Vice News or Vox News interviewed him, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm just doing it for fun,"
Mhm.
And it is what concerns me is this pattern of a lot of power with, everyone is empowered now. We talk about empowerment, right? We should be empowered with technology, all that stuff. I think nowadays average people have more power than they need. The power that average people have, it's amazing. I can go to, you saw me doing it. I can go screenshot my phone, and I can put there that I have taken 9 doses, and I have that power. I have that power to Photoshop and make it 9 doses. It's amazing how much power we
You know
have.
what?
And
Now I think more about your analogy of handing the nuke to a monkey, or to somebody. I think you used a rat as an example, right? Handing the nuke
mm,
to, and I think the idea is same, that you hand it over to somebody, somebody who does not understand what the consequences of their actions can be.
mm,
I think if I reconsider that, and especially when you mentioned this social media example, right in that time period when this political things was happening, there was some debate about, should internet be, once again, that should it be policed, should there be some sort of fact checks or not. So at
mm,
first the big companies were like, no, we are all about freedom, right? But then everybody started posting about how vaccines are bad for you, and they were like, no, you don't deserve freedom, fact
no
checks.
more free.
Yeah, so now you go to Instagram or Twitter, and you just type in if you post something and the word vaccine or COVID-19 is in there, so there's a big banner at the bottom, like, to find accurate information about this, visit this information center, right?
Mm.
So I think I agree with your idea that too much power is being given to people who don't know what to
Yeah.
do with it. So once again,
Yeah.
I think okay, I'll give you some random example came to my mind. I was once, we just shifted, and one of our elders came to visit us, and they're from, like, grandparents, and they're from a village or some area that is not as, let's just say, urbanized as where we were living. So they see that there are switches, right? And children can just so I don't know if it's a thing everywhere or not, but children usually, like, they can just put their fingers in or put a fork in or something and get electrocuted, right? That's a very real possibility, right? Or I don't know, drown into the swimming pool or into the
Mm,
bathtub or something. Like, you see the modern house, and you're like, so
mm,
many hazards, right? So many hazards. But when you think more about it, like, back in the days, your house could literally have lions and monkeys coming in. You go to the less rural areas, you see, like, monkeys and lizards and whatnot coming into your house. So I think the point I'm trying to make is, like, every aspect of life has its challenges, right? But it should be, of course, the saturation curve, right? So as progress is increasing, the risk is also increasing, right? But now suddenly it's so steep that, even by increasing just a little bit progress, the risk is going so much higher, right? So, like you mentioned
mm,
about the posts and tweets thing, like, the risk is so much higher. And I think, once again, it's a topic for another episode, but I think that some sort of civilization should be, I don't know, recreated, So it's like technology has been given, and everyone is set free. No rules, no measures, no, that have always been there. That have always been there. So it's interesting and weird to see that recently, I don't know, in the name of freedom, or I think just mere carelessness, the law enforcement, the policing, everything that sets rules and regulations, you don't see that anymore. It's disappearing. So I think, yeah, that's what makes it really, really much more dangerous. So I think I agree with that point.
I think you brought up a very interesting point about the rules, because we need rules. We need rules.
Mm.
If there's no rules, when you drive, should you drive on the left
Yeah,
or on the right? You know, the road only works because everybody follows the rules.
yeah,
Okay, once one person doesn't follow the rule, there will be an accident. It'll disrupt the entire system. There are things that you need rules for, but there are things that you don't need rules for. For example, right, art, right? But even art, right, the majority of acceptable art is still within a canvas, is still within a piece of paper stuck on the wall, or at least if it's 3D, right, you use, at least it has to look pretty.
I
There has to be
mean,
rules about it.
I like to use the word of art very vaguely. Everything is art, right? NFTs are art. But
Ah, mm,
here's the thing. Here's the thing.
mm,
If you see something and it's beautiful, the philosopher can explain it to you exactly why it's beautiful. So we have theories: the color theory, the coordination theory, the perception theory. We know why things are beautiful. So what we call people artists, they are unwillingly, unintentionally following the rules of art, because
yeah,
they're
yeah.
actually so well
Golden
versed.
ratio. Yeah.
Yeah, the golden ratio is one of them, and the color theory is one of them. So they don't know. They're just like, it looks good. But unintentionally, you can break it down. You can, there are courses breaking down Leonardo da Vinci's work and Mona Lisa and the girl with
Mm.
the pearl earring, your wallpaper right there. Yeah, so I noticed it. So there are rules that you can just YouTube what makes the girl in the girl with the white ear peeling so beautiful. What makes it so
Ear
beautiful?
pierling.
I miss. I don't know what the name
Pearl
is.
ear ring.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
By the
Yeah,
way, by the way, it's a great wallpaper. Why? Because when I look at her, she unlocks the phone. It's like I'm
is it
making
an
eye contact with
NFT?
her every time. Is it what?
Is it an NFT?
No, no, not everything is an NFT. Okay, wake up.
It
Okay.
should be. Just imagine how rich Leonardo da Vinci would be if his paintings were NFTs. He was
Oh
still alive.
yeah.
You could
Oh
sell them for
yeah.
NFTs.
Yeah.
But
I'll
yeah,
make an NFT.
for
Right.
for I think we derailed a lot from the topic, but I think we had a very interesting round about
Yeah.
perception. So I
Mm,
think, in summary, in conclusion, I
mm,
agree that our understandings, the way we see the world, the way we perceive the world, is heavily influenced by what we already know. We try to challenge it. We try to see how much can we deceive the brain, how much can we bend the rules, and at
mm,
times it works, at times it does not work. And
mm,
I think there's still gaps in our understanding as a whole, as a humanity, as neuroscientists. And there are still gaps in our understanding of how the brain works and how it
mm,
perceives the world. But
mm.
I think we had a really good round of consciousness that derailed into AI. But I think it was very interesting on that part. Do you want to, or for this entire overview, do you want to go ahead, just to wrap it up?
No, I think what a group. We really derailed, right? But we're talking about we're. I think the on the surface we covered the whole surface because we're talking about experiences, right? We're talking about human
Yeah.
experiences, what is real and what is not, and from there we still talk about AI. Again, AI is also about experience. What is real and what is not, and then we talk
Mhm.
about then we derail a bit more. It's like should about freedoms, and it should
Yeah.
COVID-19. How do so
Mhm.
I think if we go a bit further, it'll go into politics. I think it's
No,
about
I
time
think
we.
that's on the right track because now that you mention it like this, I think of like, oh, we were talking about perception. We started from perception, right? But we were talking about the consciousness, the experience of one person, and then we were like, how does it relate to others? And then it eventually evolved into the conversation about society, and then
Mm,
another society with consciousness. So I think unintentionally we went through a very chronological
mm.
order of philosophical ideas. So I think,
I think
yeah.
it's a good segue, and I think in the next section, one of the things that I'm interested in is at what point should things be free, and at what point should things be restricted, policed, and have rules.
Mm-hmm.
There are some parts on society where the rules should be there, and there's some parts where you should be free to make your own. For example, in America,
Yeah.
right, the best entertainment industry, why? They have the freedom to say whatever they want, make whatever they want, so creativity is booming there. But what's the con in there? So I think that'll be a very interesting
Yeah, I think
topic
that's
to
just
talk about.
we can discuss society as a whole. That remains a huge part of philosophy, and I think it's good. And that's one of the reason I wanted to discuss the idea of perception. That we wanted to discuss fundamental philosophy, like that was the core idea, right? So perception
Mm,
plays a huge part, and it's like the fundamental stone. Beyond this point, whatever you say, if you try to simplify it down, it comes back to perception, right? And I think that
mm,
that is why it's chronologically very very coherent that we discuss perception first. So I think, yes, we can move on to topics like society, and I still have a lot of brainstorming to do for topics. So I'm going to brief you more about topics other, not like this, but I want to do an experiment that I wanted to take a very very I would say fresh take. That's why I didn't brief you this time, but I think you did really well. I think we had a really, really engaging conversation, and I hope we can continue
yep.
this journey. And I hope the viewers and the listeners, it's engaging and coherent enough for them to follow along. And I think, yeah, that's it. And we shall continue this session next
Yep.
week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for viewing. Thank you so much, Nabil, for joining. And
Thanks so
we
much,
hope to
Salman. Very
see you.
fruitful session. Yep.
All right. And I think that's it. Thank you once again.
All
And
right.
all right. Thank you.